Alright, what we have here is a 2020 model iPad Pro. It's the 13-inch. And the screen is very cracked. As you can see, I've gone ahead and I've powered the device off, and we are going to put a new screen on it. So here we go. Alright, this is not a trivial repair, so mentally prepare yourself for 2 to 3 hours of very focused, tedious work. This is kind of like that. Alright, first things first, we put a suction cup on the screen. You can buy these on Amazon, and that way as we pull it off, it reduces the glass shatter, because we want to get the screen off with breaking as little glass as possible. So that's what I'm doing here, adding 2 of those. Another important point to make is just to talk about the risk involved in a repair like this. When you take a screen off Apple device, you void any warranty it has. That said, warranty doesn't cover screen breaks typically, or water damage, which are your 2 most common types of damage. I also want to disclose that this repair may not work. You may try this and you could break your device, so there are definitely risks involved. Keep those in mind before you decide to open up a screen like this. I've prepared my workstation pretty well, got it nice and clean, and I got all the tools I think I'm going to need to get this screen off. Paper clips, guitar picks, smudgers, and this nice little heat gun here, which is great. You don't need the most powerful heat gun, and I like this one because you can set it down and it's got a little heat protector on the nozzle, that red thing, so it doesn't start burning anything if you need to set it down. So right now I'm just heating up the adhesive around the edge. When I first started doing this, I was really worried I would burn up the internal components. I don't know, I'll worry about that now. They're very, very heat resistant for the temperature ranges of the heat gun. So I just kind of keep it moving and start lifting the suction cups to see if I'm getting any movement from the screen. In this case, the screen was staying on even though I was heating it pretty well. So I went ahead and right where it was cracked the most on the edge of the iPad, I took a tool and I just started trying to pry it up there, even if it was going to shatter the glass a little bit, and focusing heat right in that area. The places where the screen has the most contact with the glue on the iPad Pro is on the corners, and this was also pretty close to a corner. So I figured if I could get one corner up, then that would help me, get lift on the other parts of the screen where it needed to be removed. And again, the goal is to just break as little glass as possible. Be patient with yourself. This takes a lot of time, and it's your first time doing a repair like this, or if you don't do a repair like this that often. If you're watching this on YouTube, there should be a link below in the description to my PayPal account. Please consider donating $5 if the content in this video helped you with the repair. Otherwise, I'll make no money on this content creation effort. Your support really helps me keep things going. Thanks. It took me a long time to get that first corner pried off without causing too much breakage on the screen. It's basically like leveraging up a potato chip, and if you keep good heat on it, it's not gonna crack, or like a dry cracker. The tools I was using, guitar picks, this little lever that came in an online kit, weren't working super well, so I went ahead and switched to a box opener, which I learned by watching the Jerry Rigs Everything teardown videos. So just a simple box cutter with a good blade. is a good thing to move to after you get that first corner up for getting the rest of the glue off. Also, if you're cutting towards yourself, be very, very careful and try and use a protective glove on the hand you're not cutting with, just in case the knife slips. So using the box cutter on its own doesn't really work well for me, and it might not work well for you. So what I suggest is grab your handy heat gun and put heat right on the screen where that box cutter blade is. And from there you can feel the glue disengage as you move the box cutter, or in this case the pry tool. The other thing to note with the box cutter or the pry tool is you don't need to go that deep, because the glue is only a few millimeters thick, unless you're on the corner, or it might be just a little bit more than that. I'm just cutting through that glue. That's not really cutting as much as it is just moving the hot blade of the box cutter under the surface of the screen and above the surface of the metal object, just as slow as the heat goes. So it should feel like a hot knife kind of cutting through butter when you're doing it right. If you're meeting a lot of resistance, add more heat right to where you're using the box cutter. And then you can use guitar picks to keep the screen from contacting the glue again, and basically re-gluing itself to the iPad as you go. This is very important to do on the corners because there's so much adhesive there, and it will just re-glue every time if you don't use guitar picks to keep it from contacting the base again. So the suction cups will come off the screen as you heat it up, and just pull pressure on it. One of my strategies for trying to keep them on is by just replacing them on the sections of the screen that have the least amount of cracks on them. If you have a screen that's really cracked, you could put packaging tape over it and add to kind of hold it together a little bit better, and then add the suction cups to those. So that's your strategy for those situations. When you get the screen completely detached from the iPad, give yourself a pat on the back and just make sure it's elevated so that it doesn't re-stick. You've achieved perhaps one of the first biggest, hardest milestones in this repair project. I believe there's a LiDAR sensor and a couple moisture sensors on the top front facing part of the screen that are hardwired in. So that's going to be the first ribbon you take off, and there's a couple Phillips head screws you got to remove, so grab one of those screwdrivers and slowly take them off. Make sure you use your magnetic mat to place the screws on so you don't lose them. Same with the top ribbon holder. It's a little piece of metal. Once you get the two small screws out and the little metal top plate, you can just pop off the ribbon connector with a smudger. It should come off just like a Lego. That's really going to allow you to tilt the screen and disconnect the other 4 ribbon connectors on the other side. There it goes. At this point, we can really see what's on the inside of the iPad Pro. Mostly batteries. In the center we have the motherboard covered by some sort of plastic, and then you can see the 4 speakers in the bottom and top, and basically in the 4 corners of the device. At the top of the motherboard, in between the 2 speakers, there's a metal plate with 4 ribbon connectors. And that's what's connecting the screen and digitizer to the motherboard. So we're going to take those off one at a time, put them on our magnetic holder. Note that one of these screws is larger than the rest, so just keep track of which screw hole that goes back into. You should be able to tell by just looking at the motherboard if it's got a slightly different colored port. So pull those off and then disconnect the ribbon connectors, just like popping off Legos. One thing to note, see how I changed the orientation of the iPad screen? If I would have changed it like that so that it was more in a landscape instead of portrait mode, it would have made it easier from the start. So that was a little mistake I made, and help yourself by switching to that orientation from the beginning and just working with the orientation of the 4 ribbon connectors from the start, if that helps. one other detail I want to address is that I didn't actually disconnect the battery from the motherboard at any point during this repair, and it didn't brick the device. Make that feedback what you will. It's really more information than feedback though. So we're going to set the iPad body aside and get the new screen and go ahead and set it in the workstation area. And just take a look at it, make sure it looks ready to go, make sure it's not cracked. And then take the old screen and set it right on top of it. You can see that there's some ribbon connectors that aren't included in the new screen, which I'll link below, that you need to add to it from the old screen. And this is new for this model of iPad or this generation. With the old ones, the digitizer was separated from the glass. You could buy those two products and just pop them in. So it's very important not to skip this step. I go ahead and start with the easy ones to move, which are those two ribbon connectors in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to just pop those two guys off by taking off the plate with the Phillips head screwdriver, 2 Phillips head screws, same as all the other interior screws we've seen so far, and then popping off the 2 ribbon connectors like Legos. And I just place these on my handy-dandy magnetic screw mat so I don't lose them. Highly recommend using one of those. When you lose a screw this small on the floor, it disappears like it's in a black hole. So right here, I'm just reapplying these guys one at a time, pushing them back on the new screen, just like Legos, in the exact same orientation as we took them off the old screen. Now that we've got the ribbon connectors on, go ahead and put the metal plate back on and reapply the 2 Phillips head screws. So the next step is to remove the ribbon connectors for what I think is a LiDAR sensor and 2 moisture sensors. I'm not sure if they're moisture sensors or not. From the top of the old screen and reapply them to the top of the new screen. One mistake I made here that I want to talk about is I'm just going to rip these off. The first one came off just fine. You can see it peeling that adhesive tape, and the LiDAR sensor comes off. Just kind of picked off the glue with my fingernail. This whole process would have gone better with tweezers and a heat gun. It would have deactivated that glue. So that's what I suggest you do when you're removing these parts, instead of just ripping them off like I did. The reason I suggest that is because when I got that last, what I think is a moisture sensor, it just kind of like ripped the ribbon cable ripped off its solder point from the moisture sensor, and I wasn't able to fix that and reapply it to the new screen. So that's why I suggest putting a little heat on that adhesive before you pull those parts off, or as you pull those parts off. Now we want to prep the new screen for the application of these sensors. Then with tweezers, I'm carefully removing the stickies over the lenses, the clear lenses. There's also a clear lens for the front-facing camera that I removed the stickies for. So I carefully removed all those and then reapplied the ribbon cable, starting with what I believe is the LiDAR sensor right in the center of the screen, and then kind of just pushing the cables down as I go. They weren't sticking very well on the peripheries, so I used some double-sided adhesive tape, which you use to reattach the screen, to put those 2 ribbon cables back on. Once that's done, the next step is to clean off all the adhesive tape from the iPad. So I just did this with a heat gun and tweezers, and I also used a little bit of hand sanitizer to help dissolve the glue and scrape it off. In a lot of ways, this is the most tedious, time-consuming process of the whole repair. And put on some good music, get a good cup of coffee, and just do it. Take your time with the process. The more glue and small glass chips you get off the iPad edging through this process, the better the new glue and the new screen are going to stick. So this is where patience and just a calm, focus, work structure really lead to a longer lasting, higher quality repair. The other thing to note with the hand sanitizer, using as a solvent to dissolve the glue or help get the glue residue off, is you need to be really careful not to get any drops of glue on the interior components, any drops of hand sanitizer. Just try and keep them on the edge of the iPad, the glue itself. That way you don't risk shorting out any components, especially if you don't disconnect the battery from the motherboard like I did while you're doing the repair. This is because hand sanitizer isn't pure ethanol, and it's a conductor, so it could fry a component if you're not careful using it, and some of it gets on the motherboard. Alright, the next phase of the project, after cleaning all the glue residue off the exterior edges, is to start applying your two-sided adhesive tape to all the edges. And then there's this little random magnetic connector over by the volume buttons. It's a little cover there, so I just kind of hand place that back on. I'm not sure what the reason for that specific design is. Maybe they just want space. They needed space to get those volume buttons in during the assembly process. But yeah, I just kind of hand placed that in, and then did, probably 5-inch strip of the adhesive tape, so that that holds it in place in preparation for the new screen. Alright, after you get the two-sided adhesive tape attached to one side of the iPad, it's time to put the new screen on. Before you pull off the top side of the tape though, go ahead and connect it to the motherboard and test it out. Make sure it works. Once you've verified that, then pull it off again, undo the top side of the two-sided tape, and then glue the screen on. For this initial test, I'm just reapplying these 4 ribbon connectors like Legos, and then I'm not going to put the top metal plate back on because it's just a test, right? I do the same thing for the LiDAR sensor on the front. Now for the moment of truth. I went ahead and plugged the iPad in, because when I pressed the power button the first time that happened. And you kind of just pray a little bit inside, even if you're not religious, that you get a little white apple on a black screen. These are very expensive products, and it really sucks when a repair goes bad and you don't get a boot. So here we go. Nice. If you get this far, chances are things are going to work out, especially now that the digitizer is fused to the screen and they're not 2 separate products like with the old generation. So now that we know the screen works, we'll pop it off one more time. Go ahead and take off this sensor cable at the top, so that we can apply the cover to those bottom cables very easily. So I'm just going to pop off like Lego and screw on the other cover, one screw at a time, being mindful of placing the longest screw first, and just making sure all those ribbon connectors are nice and secure before putting the metal cover on. Now that we got that plate on, it's time to take off the top plastic cover from the two-sided tape. I try and use my fingernails, and if that doesn't work, little pliers help too. And then I'm just very careful not to set the full screen down, otherwise it will stick until I get that top ribbon connector back on and its plate. This is also a good time to do one final inspection of the interior and pull out any small pieces of glass or trash that may be still on the interior litter-wise. My strategy with the top ribbon connector is to gently place the back end of the screen right into the bezel so that it's going to stick to the glue when I close it. And then gently push on the ribbon connector like a Lego. You should feel a little click. And then carefully add the metal top plate to it. It can be a little tricky to get full screws in with a longer screwdriver, so if you have a shorter one that may help. And if you can't get both screws all the way in, don't beat yourself up for it. One should be enough to hold that ribbon cable in place, as long as you're not leaving the iPad on top of a clothes dryer or washing machine or something where it's going to get a lot of agitation every day. Once both ribbon connectors are back on their metal plates, you're ready to glue the screen on the new adhesive tape. You're playing for keeps this time, so just take it slow, breathe deeply, and just set the screen right into the top of the iPad for a nice smooth fit. Once it's in, you can go ahead and just gently apply pressure so that the screen is even with the bezel all the way around. Then you can go ahead and take the screen protector off the new screen and boot the device. Once you have the new screen on, go ahead and open up the Note application and test the whole digitizer. In hindsight, it would have been a better idea for me to test all this out before I glued the screen on. However, I didn't know the passcode to this iPad because I was repairing it for somebody else. So I had to get the passcode and test everything out the day after I glued the screen on. My strategy is also to use the pencil to just check to make sure the whole digitizer is working every square centimeter of the screen. And then after that, I go ahead and turn on the camera, front-facing camera that is, and test its audio and video quality, make sure all that works as well. That way, if there are any mistakes from the repair, I know them right away before delivering it back to the user. After you're done testing everything out and it all works, you're done. Congratulate yourself and drink a nice beverage of your choice to celebrate and decompress after the tedious work you just did. Once again, if you're watching this on YouTube and you learned something that was valuable in this video, please click on my PayPal link in the description and donate $5 to help cover the cost of production of this content. Your donation is greatly appreciated. Thanks.